At 18,700 feet, the German flight leader called in the climb match Zwei Mustang steigen mit uns. Two P-51s were ascending at 2,900 Ft-Main, tracking the same air corridor as the Bf-109 G6s from JG-27. Their speeds were identical, 271 mph indicated. The 109s had initiated the climb to escape an Allied sweep, expecting the American fighters to dive away, as they always did. They didn't. The U.S. Unit lead, First Lieutenant Ray Coulter, was flying outside orders. High Command had strictly banned vertical merges at that altitude. If they go up, you break away. The group commander had warned. Coulter ignored it. His wingman, a 19-year-old rookie from Alabama, couldn't even keep formation. Then came the twist. Instead of flattening at stall margin, Coulter's Mustang performed a half-yaw pitch roll, what manuals called a rudder-snap energy brake. It wasn't in training. It shouldn't have worked. But it stalled one of the 109s, froze another in a vertical turn trap, and triggered an urgent message back to Luftwaffe Sector Command Mustangs, matching climb. Pattern broken. March 1944, Northern Germany. Altitude war. Manuals called the maneuver suicidal. He called it timing. The P-51 Mustang was admired for its range, its speed in level flight, and its ability to dive hard and fast. But in late 1943 and early 1944, most U.S. pilots were taught one thing about the Mustang in vertical combat: don't try it. Against the Bf-109, especially above 15,000 feet, climb fights were off limits. The aircraft's mass, coupled with the drag from its belly scoop radiator, made it the wrong tool for nose-up engagements. Instructors were blunt. Use your dive. Don't stall it trying to match climbs. The German will hang there and shoot you out. Climb charts posted in briefing rooms showed the difference plainly. At 16,000 feet, the Bf-109 G6 could exceed 3,200 Fallmin in a zoom climb when light on fuel. The Mustang, meanwhile, topped out around 2,100 Ft-Min in the same band. Add to that a full internal fuel load, often over 270 gallons, and the Mustang's energy bleed was faster than the Germans. Worse, the Merlin engine's torque at high RPMs made stall entries unpredictable. Pilots complained of nose roll when throttle was applied above 2,800 RPM, especially during high-angle rudder input. That created a stall vector offset by up to 11 degrees, enough to misalign recovery attempts. In short, the Mustang was never trained for vertical matches. Doctrine said to pull out, dive away, and reset at lower altitude. And for good reason, many who ignored that didn't return. Yet by February 1944, German pilots began submitting irregular combat reports. P-51 attempted to climb, maintained angle, unknown maneuver near stall, evaded. One 109 pilot claimed the American used a kind of half-roll at peak ascent, something not previously seen. These were dismissed. U.S. Command didn't believe the Mustang could hold in a vertical exchange, and they weren't alone. Luftwaffe Command in Berlin issued an internal memo stating, "Enemy heavy escorts not optimized for climb vector conflict. Initiate vertical trap as primary intercept method. That assessment would prove wrong within weeks." Ray Coulter was among the few who disagreed from the start. He'd flown over 120 hours in the Mustang across 4 engine blocks. He understood its weakness, but he also noticed something odd during cold air trials above 17,000 feet. The radiator drag coefficient dropped more sharply than expected, and torque roll initiated more slowly when the fuel load was under 100 gallons. He ran unapproved climbs, practiced asymmetrical rudder rolls at 17,800 feet, nose up at 24-degree pitch, most stalled, a few skipped skid-rolled. He took notes. None of it was in the manual. His CO warned, "You lose a wingman doing that. It's on you." Coulter kept flying it. Alone. quietly, until March 5th, 1944, when clouds opened at 17,000 feet and 5 Bf-109s dropped through from above. Only one Mustang turned up to meet them. The official U.S. escort doctrine for Mustang squadrons in early 1944 emphasized lateral engagements and controlled withdrawal. Climb merges were considered traps, especially against the Bf-109G6. The logic was simple. The German fighter, with its high power-to-weight ratio, lighter frame, and boosted supercharger, could claw upward with frightening speed. The Mustang's role wasn't to match altitude, it was to stay fast, wide, and alive. U.S. tactical briefings made that clear. In vertical merges above 15,000 Oberpunkt, the Bf-109 will dictate position. Do not commit. Flight instructors drilled it in. The Mustang was a finisher, not an initiator in steep climbs, and the specs seemed to support it. The 109G6 could spike to 3,300 P-51 at 16,000 ft in clean configuration. The P-51B, carrying full internal tanks, often fell short of 2,100 Ft-min in the same band. But that wasn't the full picture. What doctrine missed was how drag curves shifted at higher airspeeds and colder altitudes. The Mustang's laminar flow wing, originally blamed for poor turning, was actually more efficient at high IAS. Even more important, the scoop radiator's Meredith effect began to show benefit above 270 mph. At those speeds, the drag penalty from the scoop lessened due to heat compression and airflow channeling. In short, the Mustang lost less energy during sustained climbs than predicted if it entered the merge fast enough. But speed alone wasn't enough. The Bf-109 could still pivot inside the Mustang's radius due to its lighter wing loading, Bf-109G6 32.1 lbft2, P-51 39.5 lbft. That difference mattered. The 109 could roll and pull tighter, especially in a vertical arc. Standard Mustang countermeasures included diving away and re-engaging from above later. That's how escort formation survived. Coulter believed the doctrine had a flaw, not in avoiding the merge, but in never testing it. He noticed during multiple zoom climbs that the Mustang held a clean line longer than expected, especially when the pilot modulated throttle to control torque buildup. In simulator training, he began experimenting with what he called energy pinching, pulling vertical while slowly reducing throttle to just under max torque, holding rudder neutral, then kicking hard rudder at the stall point to induce a brief yaw brake. It wasn't a roll, it wasn't a slide. It was a vector pinch, a snap in orientation, that momentarily gave him control in a stall-adjacent state. He kept it secret. There was no place in the flight envelope for half stalls at 18,000 feet, especially not with enemy fighters above. But something changed in March. More and more Luftwaffe intercepts were being reported above 20,000 Luftwaffe, diving fast, using stall-out traps to force Mustangs down. The Germans weren't trying to kill on entry, they were trying to bleed energy and kill on recovery. Coulter saw the flaw. They were expecting turnbacks. Not a Mustang that climbed into the trap and turned it inside out. At 17,200 feet, Ray Coulter's flight of 4 P-51Bs cruised in loose finger-4 formation, pushing 278 mph true airspeed. They'd been in the air for 1 hour 37 minutes, with fuel reserves hovering around 42%, enough for another 25 minutes of patrol plus reserve for return. Above them, cloud layers scattered between 18,500 and 21,000 feet, thin bands. Good cover for high-angle intercepts. Radar operators had reported fleeting contacts northeast of Bremen, but nothing solid. Still, every Mustang pilot in the group knew what that meant. BF-109s hunting at altitude. Coulter's wingman, Luftwaffe Bishop, was flying tighter than usual. He was young, new, and nervous. His altitude hold drifted plus 150 feet, barely stable. Coulter tapped the throttle, checked his climb rate, holding steady at 1900 minutes, nose just 5 to ground up. Then the call came from Yellow 2 Visual, top layer 5, maybe 6 bogies, coming hot. Coulter scanned. At first, not just specks, then shadows slipped between cloud wisps. 5 BF-109 G6s, high and diving fast. Angle of descent, 19 degrees, starting from roughly 21,000 feet. They were closing at speed, estimated 310 mmps. The intercept vector was nearly head-on, but offset by 14 degrees, creating a diagonal merge. Coulter did the math in his head. Vertical delta, 3,600 feet. Closure speed, 310 mph. Time to merge, 19 seconds. He keyed the radio. Squadron SOP was clear. If enemy altitude 1500 FT above, execute lateral brake and dive. Do not enter vertical contest. He said one word, brake. 3 Mustangs obeyed. Coulter did not. He adjusted pitch to 6 degrees up. Throttle full, prop RPM max. His climb rate jumped to 2,800 FT min. Airspeed dropping from 278 to 264 mph. Bishop panicked. Lead. You're going vertical. They're coming down on us. Coulter didn't answer. The BF-109 split into 2 elements, 3 fast, 2 trailing, 1 pair kept high, preparing to bounce any Mustang that tried to escape up. The leading trio tightened their line, spacing just 0.2 miles apart, guns hot. The lead German pilot lined up, his guns set to converge at 650 yards. Coulter's Mustang was still climbing. Distance to merge 1.6 miles. Time 14 seconds, airspeed. 258 Hempian falling. He was within 800 feet of stall margin if he held the climb. His nose pointed straight toward the threat. Every manual said to dive, break out, force a split. Instead, Coulter kept rising, nose higher, throttle pinned, holding rudder neutral. His altimeter ticked past 18,300 feet. His climb rate dipped to 2,000 foot minutes, airspeed now 246 Mach. The lead 109 locked guns at 800 yards. The others fanned left and right angle traps, and Coulter climbed straight into it at 18,300 feet. Ray Coulter pushed into the final stretch of his climb. The Mustang was heavy, now edging just 241 UAB indicated. His climb rate had dropped to 1050 ft-min, and stall margin was narrowing fast. The aircraft vibrated, not from enemy fire, but from airflow, sheer as the prop torque and thin air combined to strain the fuselage. Behind him, Lead Bishop had peeled away, diving hard per protocol. Ray was alone now, with 3 BF-109s angling in on separate intercepts. The lead German was closest, closing in at 297 mph. Guns armed, 109 nose stable, convergence set for 600 yards. The gap shrank fast. Coulter watched his slip indicator drift. He was almost out of vertical energy. Any more pitch, and he'd stall. Any less, and he'd be a sitting duck. He made the call. Throttle cut to 65%, prop RPM still max. Stick back pressure released. Rudder left full kick, held for 0.7 seconds. The Mustang flared but not level. Instead, it yawed left while the nose dipped 14 degrees, inducing a brief aerodynamic skip. For less than a second, the aircraft was neither climbing nor turning, just floating sideways. The 109 pilot fired. Miss. His burst passed where Coulter should have been, but Coulter had just changed direction without changing lift vector, a side flare that stalled him under the line of fire. The German shot past at 220 yards. Overshooting high, Coulter kicked right rudder, rolled level, and eased throttle back up to 80%. One enemy off his back. The second BF-109 adjusted early, saw the dodge, and pulled wider. He didn't commit yet. But the third was already in his dive, coming in from a higher angle. Coulter tried the same maneuver, cut throttle, pitched shallow, prepped rudder, but this time his airspeed was down to 228 mph. Barely 11 mouth above stall onset. He kicked rudder. Nothing. The Mustang hesitated, then dipped abruptly. The elevator lost response for a beat. Coulter jammed throttle forward to catch it, but the aircraft bucked. No clean skip this time. The flare was too late, too slow. The 109 pilot fired short burst, 0.6 seconds. Rounds stitched past the left wing, close enough to rattle panels, but no hits. Coulter rolled away, speed now under 220 mph. The aircraft was heavy, slow, and caught in thin air. The Bf-109 reversed and came around again, now behind Coulter's. 6 at 300 yards. One wrong choice had worked once. It wouldn't work twice. And now, Coulter had less than 12 seconds before the next burst. The Bf-109 pilot didn't fall for it a second time. He had seen the first flare, watched the American Mustang twist sideways, stall just below the cone, and recover level. It had looked uncontrolled at first, but the angle was too precise. Now, at 18,200 feet, with Coulter's P-51 slow and vulnerable, the Luftwaffe flight adjusted tactics. The second wave didn't dive fast. It didn't overshoot. Instead, the lead German throttled back to 85%, holding speed at 265 mph. He widened his approach vector, staying offset at 22 degrees, and dropped his dive angle to 12 degrees, creating a longer intercept window. His wingman mirrored the maneuver, spacing at 230 yards. Instead of firing on approach, they waited. They'd seen the Mustang bleed speed on the rudder-flare. Now they would let him bleed it dry. Coulter checked his instruments. Airspeed 299 mph, climb rate negative, altitude holding just over $18,000 feet with minor fluctuations from torque corrections. Left rudder felt sluggish. Torque response was lagging. His stall margin was razor-thin, just 9 mph. Then, the lead 109 did something new. He began a slow roll left. Not to fire, but to draw Coulter into a reaction. It was a feint. If Coulter tried to roll right in defense, he'd lose speed and angle stall for real. Coulter didn't bite. He held neutral elevator, stabilized pitch at 2 degrees nose up, and dropped throttle to 58% to avoid stall. It gave him less torque to work with, but more control in recovery. Then came the real move. The 109 nosed down 3 degrees, fired a 0.4-second burst, and immediately yanked up again, expecting Coulter to jink. He didn't. But the second 109 coming in behind had already corrected for that. He fired where the Mustang would be, not where it was. Tracer rounds passed within inches. One clipped Coulter's right flap just to graze, but enough to make the aircraft twitch hard. The Mustang bucked left, dropped 90 feet, and momentarily lost elevator response. Torque effects magnified. Control lag spiked to 0.9 seconds. The 109s had figured it out. The rudder flare didn't work at low stall margin, and now Coulter was below the safety window, airframe unstable. Speed down to 213 mph. He pushed throttle to full. The engine roared. But with high angle of attack, the Mustang barely responded. It was climbing. Yes, but slower. Weaker. The power wasn't translating to lift fast enough. The third Bf-109 began a dive from above. He'd seen both failed maneuvers. He lined up center, straight shot calculated entry angle 17 degrees, convergence range 450 yards. Coulter had nothing left. No speed, no stall room, no rudder margin. The next burst would hit. He had one option left, and it meant breaking every procedure. He dropped throttle to 0, kicked hard left rudder, and threw the nose into an intentional stall. The Mustang fell out of the sky at 18,040 feet. Coulter's Mustang pitched left into a deliberate stall. It was a desperate choice, one not written in any manual and trained in no briefing room. The moment he cut throttle and threw full rudder, the aircraft rolled into instability. The wings buffeted. The elevator response dropped to near 0. Airspeed plummeted to 148 Poyomapu, well below safe climb margin. The aircraft's angle of attack surged to 18. Second, dangerously past the Mustang's laminar flow tolerance. The right wing dropped first. Coulter countered with opposite aileron, but it took 1.3 seconds to respond. He had no lift. Torque twisted the nose right, dragging the airframe into a slip yaw. The aircraft pitched nose down automatically. A growl, but Coulter didn't pull back yet. He was intentionally delaying recovery. He needed to fall fast before the next burst landed. Above, the third Bf-109 was firing. The tracers tore through the air Coulter had just vacated, 50 seconds late. The German overshot, but barely. Then the Mustang began to spin, not a flat spin. Worse, a slow barrel spiral. Rudder locked, with differential lift between wings. The airspeed hovered at 151 miumi, but the plane was rolling on the yaw vector, a dangerous motion, with no lift authority. If he didn't correct soon, the aircraft would enter a secondary stall, flatten out, and tumble. The stall warning horn blared just once before cutting out. The altimeter dropped. 17,500 feet. 17,100. Coulter made his move, throttle back to 60%, prop pitch to auto, neutral stick, and a quick, shallow right rudder tap, 0.5 seconds, no more. The left roll stopped. The yaw slowed. At 16,880 feet, the Mustang started to track forward again, still descending, but under partial control. Engine RPM spiked 3 to 100, but he didn't touch throttle yet. His climb window was gone, but he was alive, barely. Then the vibration hit. A new one. He checked controls, right flap flutter. The left wing was lifting harder. Unbalancing roll authority. Right aileron response delayed by 0.8 seconds. It wasn't just an airflow disruption. Something had been clipped. He leveled the wings manually, shaking from feedback. Elevator recovered slowly. He eased nose up just 3 degrees, enough to stop the drop. Altitude 16,700 feet, speed 174 mph and climbing. But then smoke. Not from the engine, from the left wing root. Minor fuel leak. Pressurized line must have been nicked. He checked pressure holding. For now. Behind him, 2 of the 109 circled, unsure if he'd crashed. One kept visual but didn't descend. Coulter rolled left to present less surface area, stabilized his heading, and pushed throttle to 75%. The aircraft rattled but held. He was alive, but out of climb, out of surprise, and with one rudder cable starting to stick, and the lead 109 he hadn't disengaged. He was diving again hard, coming straight from 19,000 feet with a better angle. And Coulter had only one way to counter. He had to fly the pinch roll fully, this time at low altitude, damaged, and slow. The energy pinch roll wasn't a tactic born in flight school, it was born in failure. Coulter had first stumbled into it weeks earlier during a botched vertical drill over England. At 17,800 feet, overloaded with drop tanks, he'd tried a climbing turn with rudder input too early. The aircraft yawed sideways, stalled one wing, then skipped into a barrel-like tilt, not a spin, not a coordinated roll, something between a side slip and an inversion. But something strange had happened. Instead of tumbling, the Mustang's torque pulled it forward again, just off axis. It had lost speed, but it had turned faster than a traditional roll and reversed vector in under 2.3 seconds. Coulter logged it privately, repeated it throttle reduced to 60%, pitch angle held under 21 quarters, rudder thrown hard left for 1.1 seconds, then released just as the roll initiated, elevator input minimal, letting torque do the work. He found that if the airspeed entering was between 172 and 184 mph, and prop RPM stayed above 2,800, the aircraft would perform what he called a pivot torque yaw, a flare that wasn't flat, a roll that wasn't coordinated. Done right, it made the enemy overshoot. Done wrong, it stalled and killed you. No manuals documented it. No training approved it. It was too sensitive, too dependent on throttle timing, rudder control, and micro-response from the aircraft's torque vector. The Mustang, especially the P-51B variant, had a long nose and a slightly unstable center of mass under asymmetric airflow. But Coulter realized that instability was the key. If he could enter a yaw roll with high torque and low pitch, the aircraft would essentially pinch into a new heading without needing speed for a full roll. The movement lasted less than 2 seconds, dropped speed by 2227 map, and created a momentary stall arc, but if timed precisely, it made aiming impossible for anyone behind. The physics were brutal. Entry speed, 172-184 mep. Rudder deflection, 100% left to right, held 1.2 sec, max pitch allowed 21 degree, roll bias during maneuver 4 degree opposite to rudder, torque-assisted yaw offset 13 to 18 degree off-flight vector, time window to recover 1.4 to 2.0 sec, depending on altitude risk of stall extreme. Effectiveness against direct pursuit, devastating. If pulled at the moment before stall, Coulter had only ever done it clean light on fuel, under control, never in combat, never with a damaged flap, and never at the edge of a second kill, but now at 16,700 feet, with a Bf-109 diving in and guns already charging. He had no choice. He had to pull it damaged, low, slow, and late. And if the rudder cable stuck halfway through the roll, he'd be flying a spin into gunfire at 16,700 feet, with his right flap fluttering and fuel pressure warning flickering yellow. Coulter scanned left. The final Bf-109 was diving fast, angle 17 degree, wings stable, engine pushing near 100 horsepower, heading straight for a 6 o'clock intercept, range 400 yards, closure rate 310 meters. Coulter couldn't outrun him, he couldn't climb, and he couldn't dive, not with a wing imbalance and a rudder cable starting to resist under torque. What he had was space. Just 1/800 feet of vertical air before reaching his stall floor. Just enough room for one maneuver. He began the setup. Throttle back to 62%, airspeed steady at 179 map. Nose up 5 degrees, but not climbing, just drawing the line. The Mustang shook again, flap turbulence getting worse. The Bf-109 pilot narrowed the angle, dipped his nose, taut degrees, began to fire, long burst, 0.8 seconds. Guns zeroed for 400 yards. Tracers lit the sky. Coulter banked right shallow, not to dodge, but to draw him in. Airspeed 176 map, altitude 16, 420 FT Coulter, checked his timing. 3. The German was closing, now at 420 yards, nose tilted, keeping lead ready to adjust with minor rudder and cut him off in a shallow turn. 2. Coulter cut throttle hard down to 42%. The Mustang immediately lost 12 mm. He slammed full left rudder, held it for 1.1 seconds. Nose yawed 13 degree left. 1. At that instant, Coulter yanked the stick back half pressure, just enough to induce nose pitch at 16 deg, while rolling slightly right to fight the rudder-induced torque. The Mustang snapped sideways, not flat, but diagonal. The nose skidded through the air like a weightless plow, breaking airflow symmetrically across the forward scoop. The enemy's aim point vanished. The Bf-109 overshot left. Now. Coulter eased off rudder, reversed roll, added 55% throttle, and re-engaged elevator. Mustang snapped back upright just as the enemy banked to correct. The German tried to turn back, tightening circle. Hard G's. Coulter kicked right, rudder rolled under, then up, airspeed 166, barely enough. He squeezed the trigger. Range 120 yards. The 50s roared 6 streams laced into the 109's underside as it crossed in front of his nose. Sparks, black smoke. Right wing tore free near the root. The 109 twisted left, vented smoke, then entered a steep tumble. Kill confirmed. But Coulter wasn't stable. The flare roll had cost 28 mop, and his airspeed was now 141 mph, dangerously close to stall. He lowered nose 5 degrees, throttle 70%. But the Mustang hesitated. Rudder response lagged left, cable tension failing. Then warning light, coolant temp 289 degrees WAS. And another problem, 2 more blips on radar, far yes. But climbing, fuel 9% altitude, 15,900 FT and falling. He had seconds to decide. Stay high and fight on a crippled rudder with one elevator edge peeling, or dive into clouds and risk blacking out at 400 plus. MP in a wounded bird. Either way, he had no more maneuvers left. The kill was clean, but the cost was climbing. Coulter's Mustang leveled off just under 16,000 feet, but the left wing dipped from drag imbalance. He kicked opposite rudder to correct nothing. The left rudder cable was stiff, likely frayed, slow to return. His aileron roll response was down nearly 40%. With right input taking 1.1 seconds to stabilize. He checked coolant 290 Fokker and rising. Oil pressure fluttered. Fuel was down to 6%, barely enough for 20 minutes of economy cruise, no reserve for combat. The flap vibration worsened above 180 miles map, forcing him to throttle back. Below, layered clouds moved in around 9,000 feet. Safety or a trap. Then the radio crackled. 2 climbing your north, range 6 miles, likely 109s. They were coming slowly, high angle, methodical. The Germans had learned no more dive passes, no more overshoots. They were setting a net. 1 Mustang, low energy, wounded, alone. Coulter checked altitude 15,400 feet, speed 203 mph, too slow to run, too fast to stall clean. He looked down at the cloud layer. Top of deck 900 FT visibility. Limited descent risk, high-speed blackout, airframe overstrain, spin risk if roll controls failed mid-dive. He had 2 options. 1, stay above cloud circle wide. Fake altitude confidence, risk climb trap. 2, dive for cover, disappear. No guarantee of recovery. 1 shot at escape. The climb traps were working now. His torque flare wouldn't save him a 3rd time, not with a rudder half dead and coolant, spiking toward 300 yards west. He chose the dive, but not yet. He throttled back to 52%, bled speed gently to 187 map, then rolled left barely just enough to face the largest cloud wall. The Mustang bucked twice. Right wing still felt lighter. Fuel slosh or impact bend. Unclear. At 14,200 feet, the left rudder finally locked. Dead. Pedal to the floor, no input. He was flying one-legged. Airspeed 198 mapuksh. He counted it out loud. 3, throttle 0. 2, nose down 12 degrees, not steep, not gentle. 1, full stick, left roll hard as he could manage. The aircraft twisted into a left-hand descending spiral, stabilizing at 450 ft-min descent. That was the only way he could turn now gravity and roll bias. The Mustang punched into cloud at 1,000 feet. Gone from radar, gone from sight. Above, the 2 109s called visual lost. He kept descending, stabilized at 8,900 FT, then nosed up gently. Throttle back to 50%. He couldn't maneuver, but he could run straight and low. He trimmed rudder manually, wedge tapped near the pedal, and angled east toward home base at RAF Halesworth, 122 miles out. Coolant 302 degrees. Pressure holding, barely. No more engagements, no more turns, just the longest hour of his life on 1 cable, 1 flap, 1 hope the engine didn't boil. Coulter limped over the Suffolk coast just after 0900 hours, flying low, wings nearly level, rudder jammed half left. He had been in the air for 2 hours, 41 minutes, and his Mustang, scorched, battered, unbalanced, was barely flying. He radioed ahead with a clipped report, 1 engine, no rudder. Request straight in. RAF Halesworth granted clearance, but winds were picking up 13 knots, crosswind from the southwest. Normally, Coulter would use rudder to crab on approach. Today, he had none. The elevator was soft. The right flap felt loose, and trim control was lagging half a second per input. Gear came down at 5 miles out, with the left main strut taking longer than expected to lock. Coulter reduced throttle to 35%, holding 122 mph over the threshold. Descent rate 850 ft-min, no flare. He couldn't risk a stall with asymmetric lift. The Mustang hit hard. Left main hit first. The tailwheel collapsed on impact, and the aircraft skidded over 230 yards, veering left across the gravel shoulder. He held the stick back, braced for a wingtip strike, but the aircraft stayed upright. When the fire crew reached him, steam was hissing from the cowling. Coolant temp 300 engine RPM had dropped to idle. He shut down without checklist. Mechanics logged visible damage. Right flap cracked near root, rudder cable, 70% fray, inner sheath exposed, left wing impact dent, near leading edge oil, temp 289 degrees and climbing even at shutdown. But the mystery wasn't the damage. It was the footage. Gun camera film standard, 16mm nose. Gun reel showed the final kill clearly. A perfect yaw roll flare. Snap back, trigger squeeze, BF-109 disintegrating at 120 yards. Even more startling, the lead-in showed the Mustang stalling mid-climb, nose turning sideways in a maneuver no manual allowed. The film was brought to Group Intel at Leaston. Within 36 hours, HQ marked it unconfirmed. Not the kill Coulter got his score, but the maneuver unrepeatable under current doctrine. Pilot exceeded aircraft design spec. Mark as anomaly. Coulter was debriefed for 2 hours. No reprimand, no praise. His CO said it plainly. You should have died, but you didn't. Don't teach this. They grounded the aircraft. Hull repair was logged, but it never flew again. It was stripped for parts by June. The flight report was stamped, one enemy down via unconventional roll yaw at high altitude. Not for training replication. Pilot command discretion noted. Coulter made one request, keep the gun camera real. They denied it, but word spread anyway. Whispers among pilots in the 355th. There's a way to shake a 109 up high. Just don't stall all the way. No one could explain it. No one could repeat it yet. And 2 weeks later, a Mustang over Bremen disappeared upward into a climb no one expected. It didn't take long for the footage, though officially unrepeatable, to become unofficial doctrine. In April 1944, less than 4 weeks after Coulter's encounter, a training officer at Leiston was overheard mentioning a side flare stall snap during vertical escape drills. It wasn't on the board, but 5 pilots from the 354th Fighter Group tried it anyway, each during high-speed simulator sessions or aggressive climb sparring over the channel. 3 succeeded. 1 overstalled. 1 bent his flap during an inverted yaw that looked a lot like Coulter's first roll. The tactic had no name, no manual page, but crews began calling it the pivot trick or the energy pinch. Some whispered it came from the 355th. Others thought it was a relic from RAF Spitfire doctrine. No one could trace it directly to Coulter because Coulter had rotated out by late April. He never flew another combat mission. His aircraft was cannibalized for spares by May, but the effect rippled. Kill reports from May and June 1944 began noting strange behavior among Mustangs at altitude. BF-109 pilots started overcorrecting, pulling out of climbs earlier, overshooting even cautious Mustang pilots. Some Luftwaffe units received updated intercept protocols recommending delayed dive entry and reduced throttle during zoom climb, a subtle but telling shift. They'd learned something had changed. In one mission log over the Ruhr, a Mustang pilot claimed a 109 kill using an inverted stall flare at 17,000 ALFT, but the gun camera had jammed. Intel logged it as unsupported. But others in his flight confirmed the role and overshoot. Coulter's maneuver had become ghost doctrine, passed from pilot to pilot, in quick sketches, brief nods, or late-night debriefs. It wasn't taught, it was shown, not official, not safe, but very real. Back in England, a mechanic from the 357th was asked why so many left rudder cables were wearing out. He shrugged. They keep kicking sideways up high, dunno why. They all do it now. By the time summer began, the Mustang was no longer seen by the Luftwaffe as just a diving escort. The G-Series BF-109s were forced to respect one hard fact. Some Mustangs could climb, some could stall, and one or more could roll inside you while doing both. The Mustang that made the maneuver famous P-51B. Tail number 436924 never flew again. After landing at RAF Halesworth with coolant, at 301 degrees and a failed rudder cable, the airframe was deemed structurally compromised. The left wing's internal spar showed torsion cracks, and flap vibration had stressed the hinge mounts beyond repair spec. On April 12, 1944, it was officially struck from operational inventory and scrapped for parts. Lt. Ray Coulter didn't file for commendation. He never requested a decoration for the kill. He rotated stateside 2 months later to assist with gunnery instruction in Florida, training replacement pilots on how to handle vertical merges, though he never once mentioned the pinch roll by name. His combat record closed with 3 confirmed victories, all within a single 3-week span. He left the Air Corps in 1946, started an engineering firm in Ohio, and never flew a fighter again. In one 1952 interview off the record, he was asked if the maneuver was deliberate. He answered, only the first time. The rest were timing and God. But the move didn't die with the aircraft or the war. In Korea, F-86 Sabre pilots would later record evasive rudder skips under MiG pursuit, abrupt yaw rolls executed at near-stall speeds, followed by recoil trigger snaps. These weren't part of any USAF training guide, but the timing was familiar. The energy loss, the offset vector, the recovery arc all matched that old maneuver nobody could quite name. By 1958, air combat trainers had a phrase in their syllabus, almost identical to one Coulter's CO had muttered, if you're slow, boxed, and out of lift kick and roll once, only once. There was never a diagram, never a checklist, just whispers, because the pivot rolled the energy pinch. The rudder-flare, whatever you called it, wasn't a move you learned. It was a move you reached for when the playbook failed, when you'd bled speed, lost wingman, and couldn't outturn or outrun. When the enemy had the angle and all you had left was torque, gravity, and a second too late to matter, unless you made it matter. Mission complete. If your stall horn screams and tracers spark at your canopy kick, roll and fire, but only once.